Good morning and welcome to Peggy's Place. I'm Leanne Lindsay, your host today, and we have a great show lined up for you. We're going to be talking with an award-winning author, and in honor of National Women's History Month, it is a female writer and author, and also someone who used to live in the area of Santa Rosa and then has moved back east. We'll be catching up with her momentarily. First, I need to tell you a couple of things. Be very careful out by the ocean. There are riptides and cross currents, and you don't want to get caught by a sneaker wave. So the ocean is turbulent and it can be dangerous. It can be beautiful, but dangerous. So be very, very careful. It's cloudy outside currently, 49 degrees. Rain is coming later this afternoon. And it looks like on the weekend, we do have a break from the rain. And then the rain's coming back again on Monday and Tuesday. And we do have another announcement to tell you about up in Point Arena this afternoon, starting from noon to 5. It is the artists that are called Cynthia Myers and Peter Dobbins, and that's Glass and Photography. It is an open reception for them, and that's going to be from noon to 5 today up in Point Arena. Beautiful glass artwork by Cynthia Myers. She's from Little River. Peter Dobbins is local, and he'll be showing some of his local black and white and color photography of the coast, as well as some of the people here on the coast. So that's today up in Point Arena at the Coast Highway Art Collective at 284 Main Street, right next to the Redwood Credit Union. And that will do it for our announcements for right now. If you've got some announcements, please do send it in to us at KGUA. We can be found at kgua.org or email kguafm@gmail.com. We are streaming around the world at kgua.org, and we are also simulcasting to YouTube right now, so you can go to our YouTube page and just search for KGUA. And we are an independent public radio station in Molalla, 88.3 FM. And this is Peggy's Place again. I'm your host, Leanne Lindsay, today. And we have with us on Zoom from Cincinnati, Ohio, an award-winning author and also an editor of books. And we'll get into talking about that too. Her new book is just being launched this weekend called The Darkness. It is a psychological thriller, and her name is Robbi Sommers Bryant, also a dear friend of mine. Welcome to the show. Good morning.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Robbi. And so far away.
I know.
Well, I just want to let our audience know that Robbi has written many award-winning books, including 6 novels, a novella, 5 short story collections, and 1 book of poetry. And her work has been published in magazines including Reader's Digest, Redbook, Penthouse, college textbooks, and several anthologies. And as editor-in-chief of the Redwood Writers 2018 anthology, and the Redwood Writers are in Santa Rosa, she supervised the creation and publication of Redemption, Stories from the Edge. She's also a past president of the Redwood Writers, which has over 350 members. But as I mentioned, she is also an editor. Her professional focus is on developmental editing, content editing, copy editing, and proofreading. And she's also a professional writing coach. Quite the background, Robbi. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, just a little bit before we get into the book and the creation of this psychological thriller? Just give us a little background about yourself.
Well, I was born in Cincinnati and I moved to California. What's that?
You've gone back to your roots.
I've come home. In fact, I live in the same neighborhood I lived when I was growing up. I moved out to California and I was there for about 50 years. So that makes me 51. And I've done a lot of different things My main career was a dental hygienist, and on the side, I was writing books. And then over the years, I got into editing, and I've been editing. I have a thriving editing business right now, and I'm basically a nice person.
And so what compelled you to write about a serial killer?
Well, it wasn't so much about a serial killer, even though it's about a serial killer. It's it was more my interest in good and evil,
Uh-huh.
and at what point evil comes into the body. Does it come in before birth? Does it come in during birth? Or does it come in due to the environment? And so I started studying and learning about evil and learning about different serial killers. And from that, I just got an idea that I wanted to write about a serial killer since I felt like I knew quite a bit about them. And so that's how the book started.
I remember back when I was living in Sebastopol when I was going to the Redwood Writers too, and you and I were talking about the concept of this book, and you had brought up Ted Bundy. And I was living in Aspen, Colorado when he was on the loose back in the day, and it caused quite the uproar in the area. And so we got to talking about some of those cases and what happened not only there, but in other locations. And so you did study him and a couple of others, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, my character is based uh, sort of on Ted Bundy, but it's not, because he was in law school, so's my character. He was in Seattle, so's my character. He does crimes of opportunity, so does my character. Things like that.
Well, I have to say that so far this book has gained some quite a bit of attention at the New York Book Festival. It got first place for sci-fi and horror. At the Paris Book Festival Award, it got honorable mention. And for the Page Turner Awards, it was the ebook finalist. At the San Francisco Book Festival, it got the honorable mention award and the Reader's Favorites 5-star book award. So it has gained quite a bit of attention pre-launch here as you go into this weekend to launch your book. That takes a lot of work to not only write the book, but then when it comes out and bring it out. And I do want to let the listeners know too that, in honor of National Women's History Month, this book was also published by a company called Bedazzled Inc. in Fairfield, which is in our neighboring county, Solano, and they are run by all women. I think that when I looked at their list of their team, it was all women, and they choose books that have women protagonists. So I think that that was important to bring out as well about your book. So when you bring out a book, you work with a publisher and doing the launch. What goes into all of that?
Pretty much. Oh, I do want to say one thing is that this publisher, as you said, primarily does women protagonists. My book has a male protagonist, but the female character plays a big part. And so that's how I got into this publishing house. And they started a new branch for books that don't quite fit into that particular category of a female protagonist.
But
Yeah.
the story, yeah, I really identified with this female character, and she helps to balance the story to help it move along. And tell us a little bit more about how that interaction happens between those two characters.
Well, Edward, who is a serial killer, was very obsessed with a serial killer when he was growing up called the Lace Ribbon Killer. And he watched everything about the serial killer when the serial killer was caught. And he found out that the serial killer had a young daughter. She was 12 at the time. And he was really interested and obsessed with her. She went to nursing school and moved to Cincinnati, and then came back after a period of time to Seattle. She's a nurse, and he pretends. Oh, I'm so sorry. He pretends like he's a.
Well, she will be right back with us.
So sorry, I threw my phone out. I forgot I had a watch on it. It's going to ring. Okay. Anyway,
Technology. But go ahead.
sorry.
So continue on in this, and then I do want to circle back to the other question I had asked and didn't. I kind of veered off from that. But go ahead and talk about this plot line here.
Well, they have a accidental meeting. Then he realizes who she is, and he's interested in her more like a trophy because this is his idol's daughter. But as their relationship, they have wounds, each character, that attract each other because they have characteristics that help to balance the other person out. And so their relationship kind of plays back and forth like that through the book.
And when you were writing this, how long did it take to write in the first place? There goes her watch again, and she's throwing it across the
I
room.
knew he'd crawl back. It's one of my clients. Okay, so what was the question again? I'm so sorry.
So in writing this, first of all, how long did it take to write? And the research that it took you to write it?
I started writing it in 2013, but I went in and out of series of writer's blocks. So there were periods where I didn't write at all. But usually it takes about a year to 2 years for me to write a book. So I think probably put together, that's about how much it was.
And what kind of research did you do to bring out the profile on these characters?
I studied a lot about psychopaths and sociopaths and what makes a person a psychopath and what um, some of their thinking is when they're out in the world and how they have the ability to pass. For example, Ted Bundy was an attractive, charismatic person, as is my character, and you would never, ever suspect that there was something up with him unless we're really paying attention.
Yeah, this is a very difficult subject to talk about or to think about. And I remember I used to really enjoy watching Criminal Minds and also Law and Order, but I really did it just to find what was happening out in the world so that I could possibly avoid it. But, I find it difficult to watch now. Maybe it's because of this past year that we've been through. It's a difficult thing to absorb sometimes when you don't want to try to think about difficult things in life, but these things exist in our world, and it's important to know that they exist. And how do people actually see someone like that that blends so well into society and yet can cause such havoc?
Well, one thing that's different about my serial killer, um, several serial killers, real serial killers, have spoken about an entity that comes into them and makes them kill. And so I decided my serial killer would have an entity, and he wants to try to be a normal person and believes that the entity is the evil. And if he can get rid of the entity, he'll be able to be normal and be like other people, have problems like other people, rather than problems that he has right now, dealing with this entity that he calls the darkness. So a lot of it is his struggle to reclaim his soul.
Reclaim his soul. And how does he go about trying to do that?
Well, he tries to do it through his relationship with Kate, and he also tries to do it in his interactions with the entity, trying to work deals with the entities so he wouldn't have to kill.
Well, if you're just tuning in, this is author Robbi Sommers Bryant, who has brought out a brand new book called The Darkness, as she was just describing it, and it is available on Amazon right now. You can also go to her website to read the first 16 pages. I've seen that it's posted up there on your website.
Mhm.
Robbi, is it robbibryant.com?
Yes, with an I.
Yeah, ROBBIBRYANT.com.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
And you can see the book there. You can also go to order it on Amazon and probably other places as well online. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, it's available at Amazon, and there's a link from my website that takes you to Amazon. It's also available at your favorite bookseller. So you can go there, and if they don't have it, they'll order it for you, but you can get it anywhere pretty much. And uh, I'm doing a book launch this Sunday, and that is going to kind of introduce it out into the world. It's sort of like a baby that you had. And now I'm going to show it off.
A virtual book launch.
Yes, yes.
And can people find out where the Zoom link is, or is this something that they could email you about, or how would they find out how to get to it?
I think it would be easier to email me. And that address is Robbi, ROBBI, 224 at gmail.com.
Okay. ROBBI224 at gmail.com.
Yes.
And what do you want people to know more about, let's say, the arc of this story?
Well, I'll
Where,
tell you. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, that's it.
I'll tell you that from what I've been told, so far every review has been 5 stars. So I'm really excited about that. And the story arc, it's a very, very fast read. And people are reading it in 1 or 2 sittings because they are having trouble putting the book down, which I'm happy about. And as far as the story arc, both of the characters have big arcs, and the story has a very surprise ending. So you probably will not guess it. If you guess it before you get to the end, you can email me and let me know, and maybe you'll get a prize.
Oh, that's cool. That's one thing that when you're watching a lot of these criminal shows or crime shows, you're always thinking ahead, going, I think I know how this is going to end.
Right.
I would like to read a couple of the quotes now from people who have read this book. And one is from a Hollywood story doctor and screenplay writer, Peter Russell. He says, The Darkness is a powerful and edgy story about a serial killer's search for his soul, a dynamite premise. With its stunning plot and razor sharp writing, The Darkness will keep you reading late into the night, just like what you just said. Just remember to lock your doors. That was Peter Russell. And then from Dr. James Zender, a clinical and forensic psychologist and author himself, he says, This is a compelling journey by a master storyteller into the darkness of a mind possessed. And then one last one, and this is one of O Magazine's top 10 reads of 2009, author Joshua Moore, and he's also a San Francisco Chronicle bestseller. He says, Bryant has scribbled a black belt thriller. I like that phrase, showcasing her immense talent, ambition with technique, and wonderfully wild imagination. But more importantly, it's readable as hell. So there you go. There's a few of the quotes that have come in about this book. And again, it has been chosen at the Paris Book Awards, the San Francisco Book Awards, as well as the Reader's Choice Award. Was that at the San Francisco Book Festival?
No.
No. Tell us more about the awards that you've won.
Um, that particular one, or just all of them?
Well, let's start with, say, the New York Book Festival Award.
Okay. Well, all these different contests you can find online. And I like the book festival contest because I feel like it's going to be maybe a more versatile group of judges, and more versatile readers will have an experience to connect with this. And so I basically just submitted my manuscripts to all these different contests, and I won them all. not, I mean, got honorable mention or.
And it's not easy. I have, me, I had published books before myself under my own publishing title, and it's not easy to get these submitted and get an award because there are so many that are submitted. And the one thing I wanted to mention too about this past year must have been really unusual, trying to figure that out in another whole depth, because you've got a pandemic to work through, and what are the conditions? They don't have a physical festival. So how does it work? Did you go through a little bit of a struggle on that end?
Well, what I did, one of the things I did is I had these little pamphlets made. I don't know if you can see them because of that had the cover of The Darkness on them. There.
You're on our YouTube channel. You can see the book, the cover of the book of The Darkness.
And go ahead.
A man is just and it's a drawing of a man following a woman, which looks like down a dark alley.
Yes. And so I filled this with the first 16 pages of the book, and with some of the endorsements that the book has gotten. And I just pass these around, and I wear a pin that says, "I dare you, enter the mind of a serial killer, the darkness," and then my name. So people will say, "What's that pin about?" And then I pull this out and I say, "Do you like psychological thrillers or suspense?" Yes. And that's my main way right now.
Marketing a book is really very, very difficult and hard. And you and I talked about that back in 2013. We even had a marketing retreat with other authors and just trying to talk about what the whole scope of marketing entails. And that's goes back to my first question that I had a long time ago here in the show. And that was about working with your publisher and how much of the marketing you do yourself, and do they do any of the marketing? Because that depends on who the publisher is.
The publisher does some marketing. They market on their website, and they have a readership, and they have a web page where they do a lot of marketing. But these days, publishers aren't really big on doing the marketing themselves. You have to have a big platform, and you have to show that you're willing to go out and market your book, because this is with almost any publishing company, this, unless you're like Stephen King,
Exactly.
like that.
Exactly. And here you are juggling not only writing the book, marketing the book, but you're also an editor in high demand. So you've got your clients to work with in launching their books, getting their books written. Talk a little bit about the editing process right now and what that entails.
Well, people send me their manuscripts when they think that they're done, and usually they're not. And what happens is they send me their manuscript. I go through it. I send it back to them. They go through it. And we do this 3 times. A lot of editors will just go through it 1 time, but I don't think that's enough. So I go through it 3 times with the writer, and they go through it, and we go back and forth. And
Well, some people think that editing is just all about grammar and punctuation, but it's just not.
no,
It has all kinds of components of editing that are like characterization and plot and theme and conflict. And you draw that out when you're doing
yes,
the editing process.
and I make sure that it's there. Sometimes it might be missing some important plot points, or sometimes it might be missing the the information that you need about a character in order to let your audience identify or feel that character or have some connection with that character. And that's a pretty hard thing to do. So I do a lot of that, but I do it all.
I have to say, when you talk about that, to identify with the character, that is what grabbed me in reading your book, The Darkness, is that the opening was very hard for me to get through because it was talking about the scene of a murder. And then the second chapter really starts with Caitlin and who she is, and this nurse who wears these cute print little shirts to make herself more accessible to her patients in her critical care ward. And she's not really like she doesn't really like to socialize, so she feels a little bit uncomfortable when she's in the gym working out to this really handsome guy who obviously starts taking interest in her, and that unsettles her. And so you begin to identify with this character because you feel her struggle of, well, I just want to get away from this guy. I just want to get out to my car. And then she gets out to her car and she's got a nail in her tire. And then who shows up behind her to help her? So already you're pulled into this woman who's, you know, in this character. So the writing that you did, that's exactly what draws people in and gets them to identify like in a snap of a second.
Yeah, it's really important. And this is one of the things that I teach my clients is having a really strong opening, an opening where the person wants to turn the page and the page and the page and the page. So that's called having a hook. And that's exactly what I put in that booklet is the first big hook. So they'll want to buy the book, find out what happens.
Right. What do you have planned next?
Well, people have been asking if there's going to be a sequel.
Mm.
And I do have an idea for a sequel, but it's a really big commitment to write a book. And so it's got to hit me one day where I just can't stop thinking about the idea. And then I'll sit down and just start writing.
The book you had before this was called The Beautiful Evil. Tell a little bit about that before we come to the end of our show here today.
Okay, The Beautiful Evil is based on Greek mythology of Pandora's box. And it's about a woman who buys an antique vase that has a top on it that's got a latch and it's locked. And she buys it in an antique store, is told not to open it. She ends up opening it. And when she does, it lets out all her darkness. And so it's a journey into her darkness and decisions that she makes because of what's happened. I kind of like edgy stories.
Well, you do this look at both good and evil in a variety
Mhm.
of different ways from different angles.
Yes,
And that is not an easy thing to tackle. And
right.
I can't imagine doing that for a few years, but you do it very well. And you have now come out with this book called The Darkness, and it is available on Amazon and at your favorite bookseller. And Robbi is doing a virtual launch of this book this weekend, and you can email her for the link to it, and that is robbi224 at gmail.com. That's robbi224 at gmail.com. And your website is Robbi Bryant. That's BRYANT.com. And you can find out more about the book and read those first 16 pages we've been talking about. This is Robbi Sommers Bryant from Cincinnati, Ohio, who also used to live in Santa Rosa because Peggy's Place, we talked to a lot of locals in both Sonoma and Mendocino counties. And you were a resident in this area for, like you said, 50 years. And
Mhm.
we miss you.
Oh, I miss you too. But it's so much less expensive here. It's amazing. So,
And everything's virtual anyway these days, practically. We're going to
yeah,
get more of a normal life one of these days soon. But, this past year has taught us that we can really be connected in a variety of other ways.
yes. Oh, I want to say one thing. One thing that is a good idea if you are going to Amazon to check out the book is to put my name with it in the search, because there's a lot of books about the darkness and different books about different kinds of darkness. And you have to scroll through quite a bit to find mine. So just put my name in with it and it'll take you right to the book.
That's good. Good point. Robbi Sommers Bryant. Sommers is Sommers. Robbi Sommers Bryant. Thank you so much for joining us on Peggy's Place today, Robbi. I miss you, and best wishes on the book launch this weekend. I'll be there.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Take
Okay.
This is KGUA 88.3 FM in Walla, California, saying goodbye to all of our